Welcome to the Rocket Roof Show, where we equip fellow roofers to do more commercial business every first and third Thursday of the month. It's time to launch your business to the next level.
This is Project Command. Stand by our power transfer.
3, 2, 1, blast off!
Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Rocket Roof Show. I'm your host, Andy Neer with Empire Roofing Contractors out of Michigan. And this is the where you go for commercial roofing tips and growth. And what we want to see here is helping commercial roofing contractors be equipped and educated for the commercial roofing industry. So today here we have our guest, Louis Rodriguez, who I've worked with quite a bit in the past for insurance coverage, and have him talking here today about liability and also beginning on getting insurance jobs through insurance claims. Louis, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about yourself and what brought you to today.
Okay, I'm Louis Rodriguez with the Third Coast Insurance Agency in Michigan, and I've been in the insurance business since 2004. Specializing in commercial insurance and helping many contractors and roofers related to their commercial insurance needs.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, we got together, I don't know, 5-6 years ago and worked on some projects. So first of all, I want to give a little bit of a disclaimer here. Trying to get this podcast lined up, I actually had to come down in the middle of the state and look at a roof with another contractor. It was actually a roof that's in litigation, and so we were on a time restraint. So I'm here at a local Culver's making this thing work, and we wanted to make sure our schedules work together. So yeah, you got to do what you got to do, right, to make things happen. So hopefully this is coming through loud and clear, and excuse any of the poor audio. We'll make sure that the content is good enough that we can handle the audio. So first of all, we're going to start off with guys that are starting out. What doesn't matter in whether it's commercial, residential, whatever. They're starting their own company, and they're all excited, they're ready to go out and do the work. And if we didn't have to deal with the ugly monster of insurance, it would make it easier. But a lot of guys are just baffled with, how do I start? What do I do? What is required of me? And what information are they going to want from me? And so where does the guy start when he needs to get liability? What kind of questions is a building owner going to ask of them, and what are they going to be required of?
That's a great question. And there's really a two-part answer that goes along with this. The first thing is when a contractor is thinking about going out on their own and getting started, it would do them well to speak with a few different insurance agents and find someone with whom you have rapport and trust with, look at the kind of business that they do and be certain that they're specializing in commercial insurance and have experience related to specifically contracting, maybe roofing contracting. And another feature to that would be that they're independent insurance agents, meaning that they have more than one insurance company to look to when finding coverage for you. If you do this groundwork in advance to when you get your first job, it will make the process go a little easier, a little smoother, a little quicker. When you do land that first job, depending on the nature of the work that you're going to do, the size of the company or homeowner that you're going to work for, then the next step would be they're going to ask you to provide insurance coverage or a proof of insurance. And that can go two ways. That can go either A, they just want a certificate of insurance, which is just a piece of paper that shows that you have coverage. And that would be the easiest thing. As you get into larger jobs and lawyers get involved, then the lawyers end up saying, hey, we want this wording on the certificate of insurance in order to protect us better. And then you might have wording like additional insured status, waiver of subrogation. These are different phrases that they want on the proof of insurance that are different than just the basic proof of insurance that that further protect your client, and so you'll become more reliant upon your insurance agency to provide the information necessary to comply with that. So just as a bird's eye overview, that's where guys and gals that are starting in the business would need to consider from an insurance standpoint.
We'd like to take just a quick break to thank our sponsor, Top Roof Marketing, a full-service marketing group that specializes in the commercial roofing industry. If you're looking to boost the commercial side of your business, they have lots of ideas to connect you with building owners who are looking for help. Visit toproofmarketing.com.
So do you have a couple of particular questions that a new contractor should ask an agent, like a couple of go-to questions so they know what to say when that they can ask the right question?
Yes, I do have a few questions like that. The first one would be asking about, just like you would with any other service professional, how long have you been in the business? Do you do other businesses like this? Are you familiar with my needs? What kind of information do you want me to provide? Those are some basic questions. And then if you have a very specific specialty that you're getting into, commercial flat roofs as an example, having an understanding that they know what it is that you're doing, that they have a good understanding of what that looks like, so that could prompt them to ask good questions of you as they put together a customized policy and insurance program for you.
And sometimes the customer you're having is going to be special, right? Like doing a warehouse is different than maybe doing an IT building that's full of tens of millions of dollars of computers. And so you can't just expect one policy or one agent is going to just have a generic policy that's going to cover you, right?
Well, you should expect the same agent to be able to handle all of that.
Yep.
And if you have done good groundwork in advance and they understand what your business is, from a coverage standpoint, most of those scenarios that you cite should be covered. Some of the things that could crop up later will be regarding wording in the policy. Do they want you to have auto coverage, work comp coverage, additional insured status coverage, waiver of subrogation status coverage? And those things could come up on a per job basis. But a good agent will anticipate some of those and inform you that here's the basic policy, and then later on, these are some things that could come up that could cost additional. Then there's a whole other field of insurance would be bonding. Are you required to put in sometimes on larger commercial jobs, if you're working with industrial jobs or municipalities, bonding could become an issue too. But just out of the gate, most companies don't start at that level. They work their way up to that level, and then over time, learn about those pieces of insurance that could be involved.
Okay. So I know one of the things you want to touch on is what is covered. I think sometimes what is expected or what is anticipated with, as for me as a contractor starting out, what was covered was a little ambiguous. And so how do we know exactly what is being covered in that policy?
That's a good question. So it'll depend on the kind of policy. And I know that a business owner can be very busy and often want to just push through the insurance thing and just get it done. But this question that you ask is a very good one, and it requires a little investment of time spent with the insurance agent, the insurance company that does the insurance, to understand what exactly is covered and, more importantly, what's excluded. As an example, a general liability policy covers damage to other people and other people's property, but not damage to your employees. So if your employees are hurt on the job, there's a policy for that, a workers' comp policy. If your company just buys a general liability policy and an employee or a subcontractor is hurt, there's no coverage. But if they have a workers' comp policy, that injury very likely could be covered. Additionally, regarding coverage, a general liability policy, and I reference the general liability policy because it's usually the first policy that's purchased by a business getting started. But a general liability policy would exclude claims as it relates to autos. So if there's an auto accident and the company's brought into a liability suit, a general liability policy wouldn't provide the coverage for that. They would have to turn to a commercial auto policy, which then begs the question, do we have a commercial auto policy in place, or are personal automobiles being used? During the process of interviewing and meeting with your agent, these are things that are uncovered and discovered. Where are the insurance exposures, and do we want to buy policies for them?
Yep. Okay. So I guess the next question would be, how does one pay? How do they determine how much I'm going to pay for a liability policy? Is there a formula? Is there risk involved, like the level of risk they're assessing me with, or is it based on my numbers of my payroll? How does that work?
Great, that's a really good question. In different policies have a different basis for the premium. So an easy example is your auto policy, your commercial auto policy will be based on the vehicles and the drivers. That's what the rate will be based on. Intuitively, most people know that if they have 2 autos, 2 trucks on a policy, and then they buy a third one, they're going to owe more premium. Intuitively, we know that. And at the same time, they know if they have 3 autos on the policy and they delete one, the premium will go down. Well, on general liability and on workers' comp, it's a little less clear. Most companies, most insurance companies, when it comes to general liability, will base the premium on sales figures as it relates to given activities and payroll figures as it relates to different activities. I'm going to come back to that in a minute because it's a little more unclear exactly what the premium is based on. But work comp is based on the payroll of given classifications of employees. And in advance of the policy period, the business owner works with the agent to estimate what they think that they might have for payroll. What I always recommend for startups, new companies, is that when they write their business plan, they have an idea of what the payroll might be initially, but that could change quarterly as you see things unfold and realize, gosh, we're busier than what we thought we were going to be. I'm hiring more people, and my payroll is going to be higher. So they should be touching base, at least in the first couple of years of business, every quarter, really, with their insurance agent to talk about where their payroll's at. Now let's talk about payroll. Well, I have a bunch of subcontractors too. And subcontractors can also be included as a premium basis for the workers' comp. And this is often misunderstood. Many business owners that I talk to feel that if they have a subcontractor, that's one way to transfer the cost of the insurance to them, that they won't have to pay for it. That can be true, but the subcontractor has to provide to the contractor a proof of insurance that shows that they have general liability and workers' comp elsewhere. Otherwise, when it comes audit time, and what I mean by audit time is at the end of the policy period, the carrier says, what was your actual payroll? They need to provide to the auditing company proof that the subcontractors that they had did have coverage elsewhere. And if they can't provide that, then the amount that was paid to those subcontractors gets added on to the payroll that the contractor has to pay, which can substantially sometimes change the premium. Andy, I'm sure that you've seen this happen before in your own experience.
I had a conversation with a guy over by Kansas City last year. That stand-up guy, he does pretty good about making sure all his T's are crossed and his I's are dotted. But for some reason, he didn't have the right documents into play for his subcontractors, and come to the end of the year, he asks for those certificates, which a lot of people do that. They do it backwards. Instead of getting it before the work's done, they do the work and they work on promises. And at the end of the year, they're like, oh, shoot, we have an audit. We got to have all this stuff. And sometimes they produce, but this particular one, the subs didn't have anything to produce. And he got hit with a little over $50,000 in cost because basically he had to cover somebody's going to pay for that premium, and it ended up being him. So, yeah, make sure that you have your ducks in a row and you know that everybody's covered and you have certificates to prove it.
Yeah, the unexpected costs can really change your bottom line.
Yep.
At the end of the day. So a good policy to have in place is that before a sub even gets on the job site, if you want them to start on Monday, just having a policy, if you're the one handling everything, then you handle it. And if you have someone maybe in the office that handles it, you have to have all of your paperwork on Friday to start on Monday. And there's a list of things that would be on that list, but included within that is a workers' comp policy, a general liability policy should be a part of that. That way you never have to wonder. And then in going along one step further, if they start on Monday, January 1st, and their policy goes from July to July, you or your office person needs to have a system in place so that if their policy ends on July 1st, on June 1st, you're asking for a new certificate of liability from them. So that, again, there's no coverage gaps in your record system. So that will help you to avoid those kinds of situations. So you asked initially about, well, what do these things cost? The auto is based on the number of autos and the drivers. The work comp is based on actual payroll and the cost of subs. And then the general liability, depending on what type of work you do, I work with a number of companies that might do siding, roofing, windows, but they also have a hardware store that they own too. And all of those factors drive the premium. Some of it is payroll, and some of it is actual sales that occurs in given types of work that they do. So when you meet with your agent, having a clear understanding of what are the basis of the premiums, what numbers are you using there, and then particularly startups, those that are in business less than 2 or 3 years, maintaining regular contact, even if it's a quick phone call or email, as to where your business is on those given premium bases, so that there's no surprise audits due, like you referenced, a $50,000 bill due at any time. Stinks no matter what time of year it comes in.
And I was speaking a moment ago from the general contractor's point of view, is having all your ducks in a row to the sub. But also speak from the sub's point, that many guys that are listening to this, I know they play that game of, hey, my contractor's requiring this paperwork. I'll tell them that I'll get it in order. I don't get it in order, but that's a really like playing with fire, because you never know when that accident's going to happen, small or large, catastrophic or whatever. And if you don't have this in place, you're really putting your whole business at risk. Am I right?
You are putting your business at risk, potentially your financial well-being, and you're potentially putting your employees and the subs of the subs at risk too. If a person believes that if they're injured on a job site, that they'll be covered, and then they realize afterwards there was no insurance in place, there's a $30,000 injury, it's bad for everybody. It's bad for the person that it happened to, and then it's bad for the person who led that person to believe that it would be covered. It can bankrupt individuals.
So a lot of guys that listen to this particular podcast might be transitioning from residential and may have dealt with liability for many years in the residential sector, but now going into commercial might be thinking, hey, I don't have to change anything, or maybe they don't know what they need to change. Can you lay out some specifics going into commercial, what they should look at in their liability policy?
Right. Yeah, so they should definitely consider keeping their agent informed of changes like that in their business. It can have an impact on the general liability part of the policy, but more importantly, on the workers' comp side. There's less of a coverage issue and more of a cost issue that could be a surprise. This will vary, particularly with the work comp. It'll vary largely by state. I do business in Michigan, so I can't speak with authority in Texas or Ohio or whatnot, but it's definitely warrants a further discussion. You see this theme keeps, cropping up, maintaining a current discussion with your insurance agency on the changes of your business. Seems like a hassle, but these conversations can be made efficient. But it's important for them to understand that so that you don't get surprised.
Well, I'm sorry. For example, coming from a contractor's point of view, when I was first getting started, I was like, this is just the thing I need. Give me the lowest policy. I didn't even think about the building owner or the customer at that point. I was just like, this is what I need. I think I started out with a $250,000 or $500,000 policy. I think it might have been $500,000 policy. And I had that for many years. But when I started working with commercial, I realized some people wanted to have $1 million or $2 million policy. But from a contractor's mentality, I know we want to get away with the least amount so we can pay the least amount. But transitioning to the commercial side, you want to really know what your exposure is, right? Like that's the key word, is exposure, that you want to make sure that something that does happen, you want to make sure that it's covered. Am I accurate in that?
You do. The cost of the insurance is a huge driving factor, which I certainly get. But I think that most contractors will find that the difference in cost between a $500,000 policy and $1 million policy is really negligible. And having an understanding of that is important. If there's a serious claim, going to $1 million happens like that. A guy falls off, an employee falls off the roof. A kid comes onto the job site. You didn't know he was there. I want to see what's going on top of my roof. He climbs up a ladder. Your guys for 3 minutes didn't see, and this kid falls backwards on a ladder, and now he can't walk. Claims go to $1 million like that, no problem. So I would encourage a higher limit of insurance, at least $1 million, right from the beginning. Even though people want to save a few bucks, it's literally only a few dollars, and it can mean the difference in the safety of your entire financial future. Coming from the insurance guy.
Yep, I hear you. This doesn't have to be a long answer, but what are a couple things that a guy can do to maintain or protect his liability premium from rising? Is there any preventative measures that he can do to keep them as low as possible?
That's a great question, and this is really where my specialty lies, is in the long-term investment that a business owner makes in the safety of his business. And the number one thing that I would say has the longest term impact is building a culture of safety. And, at the end of the day, revenues are important, making new job sales are important, but protecting all of this by building a culture of safety where the owner and the foreman on the job are constantly reinforcing the importance of safety. The cost of a claim isn't just the claim, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's the cost in morale, sales, damage to equipment, lost customers. That's huge. And having a culture of safety that's built. And the ways that this culture of safety is built by planning. Just like any other aspect of your business, you plan what the guys are going to wear on the job site, what your logo looks like, how is the equipment stored in trailers, what's our procedure at the end of the day, what's the procedure when we arrive at a job site, do we put up signage, all of these things are planned in advance. And a culture of safety is planned in advance too. And it begins at the top, and then it trickles down, so that your crews always are aware on a daily basis that you consider safety be a #1 priority, to not letting it slip that when you're on a job site, we want you to have protective foot gear. You need to have boots. You can't have tennis shoes. You need to be wearing hand protection at all times once you get out of the truck. If ear and eye protection is warranted, not letting there be sometimes where we're doing it, sometimes where we're not. We're always doing it. Many companies build a culture of safety by having the practice of a daily tailgate meeting, even if it's a 5-minute rotating basis. Today we're going to talk about this. The next day we talk about this. These building a culture of safety is the #1 long-term investment, in my opinion, that companies can make in making sure that all of the employees know from the top down. If the boss shows up in tennis shoes and shorts, that is not a good example to employees understanding that they need to be wearing, clothing that's appropriate for the job site. And if they're on the roof, if the owner's on the roof and they're not using protective gear, that's a message to the employees. This is not important. So with all leadership activities, it does start at the top, and I'd encourage that culture of safety to be something that's constantly planned and worked on, and maybe develop an annual plan. Most of the insurance companies that contractors are using have materials that are available, typically for free, that can be used. In addition to that, many contractors reach a point in the development of their company where they're subject to OSHA regulations, and may even have in each, at least one of the trucks on the site, an OSHA workbook that can be used as, there are resources available, but I'm very passionate about this part of it because I've seen the long-term impact.
Yeah, I have too. Quick question. Does liability insurance typically cover, or have you seen instances where it's covered poor workmanship?
It can cover poor workmanship. Most policies will cover damage caused by errors in the completion of the work. So as an example, the job site is tarped down at the end of the day, but not properly tarped down. A windstorm comes through in the night, and as a result, damage to the interior of the building ensues. That could be construed as poor workmanship, and that would be covered. Not sure if this is the direction that you were headed. A flat roof is completed. The crew is packed up. They've left the job site. Now they come back. Now they receive a call 2 weeks later from the client, from the customer. Hey, we had a big 2 inches of rain that came last night, and it's totally shredded this whole area in our heating and cooling system. The water came in. We want you to pay to replace the things that were damaged. A general liability policy generally will cover that. The question is the cost of the labor that went into performing that work, is that covered? Is that the question that you were asking?
Well, I think a lot of contractors are confused on what that means, because it doesn't cover the actual work that they did wrong. Like if I put tape down or some kind of welded membrane and I just didn't do it right, that doesn't mean the insurance is going to cover my work. But it may cover the damage resulted from the leak that caused. Correct? Right.
So the phrase that I use, and I know it's sort of funny, is insurance. It even covers stupidity. And that's the truth of the matter, is it even does. So if somebody wasn't paying attention, or if there was an error made along the way and it causes damage to the property that belongs to the customer, that's covered. There's an endorsement available that would also cover it would also cover the work that was completed. So if you have 22 hours invested on a given piece of work, in addition to the cost of materials, can I get coverage for that? And the answer is yes. By endorsement, the general liability policy can be endorsed to cover that, but that's a very specific coverage. And if that's important to you to have, you need to discuss what the options are with your insurance agent. This is to reference back to what you said earlier. A lot of contractors, give me the cheapest. Give me the cheapest, and then that endorsement gets left out. Well, we saved you money, but you don't have coverage for that. So having a clear idea of what you're saying no to when you choose, based on, to make financial decisions. So
the last thing I wanted to cover, kind of a segue into a little bit different topic, but it's insurance related. But I kind of wanted to hear an agent's take on it, and that is, the roofing industry has grown more into a lot more insurance work than it used to be. There's more storms happening than there were 20 years ago. There's a lot of guys that are dependent, or their niche is storm work, or they just want to get into doing storm restoration work. We don't have a lot where we're at, so this probably less than 2% of our annual sales is any kind of storm work. But anybody that listens to this podcast and they're looking to get into that, what would you say to them as far as where to look, who to contact, and I don't even know what I should ask you, but I know contractors that they get into it thinking that it's going to be super easy, but dealing with insurance companies, there's usually it's not so easy.
So the great thing about insurance work, and we're, today is March 4th, 2020. The economy is excellent. There's all kinds of new housing starts, new buildings are being constantly started. And so right now, the money is flowing. Where I've seen a lot of this is when there's an economic downturn, people are not doing new buildings. There's more repair work being done than ever. So contractors are looking for additional revenue sources, and insurance companies can be a very good source of that because they always have the money to do it when assuming that the building's insured. And arguably, depending on who you talk to, if the process by which the insurance company pays claims is followed, the pay can be very fair too, and some would even say good. I'm sure there's a few out there that say not good, but that's typically because a process hasn't been followed. So just like any sales process that you as a contractor follow, I'm sure that many people are out there actively pursuing new business, and this is a potential source of new business. And so I would look to building a professional relationship with adjusters that you do bump into. I'm sure that many contractors are using LinkedIn, following insurance websites in order to get those contacts can be very helpful because the adjusters ultimately will play a big role. As an insurance agency, we often have restoration contractors who come in here looking for work, wanting to stay at the top of the list, at the top of our mind. I would encourage that as a good practice too. Contractors, dropping in from time to time into their local insurance agencies, making their presence known, a professional presentation, calling cards, emails. Hey, this is the work that we did. By the way, here's a job that we did. If you do a great insurance job, make sure that you find out who the insurance agency is, not just the company that wrote the check. Find out who the agency is, call them up and say, we just did a job for your client, John Doe. They were very happy. I wanted to give you a copy of the letter that they gave us telling us how happy they were. Can I drop that off? And that way you get in the top of their mind so that hopefully there aren't a lot of storm losses or fire losses, but they do happen, and this work needs to be done. But you can remain on the top of their mind so that when a client calls and says, I've had a storm here, who do you recommend? I can think of Empire Contractors or whoever the company is at the top of my mind. I can say, we've had a lot of luck with them. And that's a great way to build steady referral sources from potentially those agencies and those adjusters. This can be very good business. Our economy's great right now, but there could come times when it's not, and relying on insurance companies as a source of revenue could be good.
Yeah.
A good business practice.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I never thought about that going into giving my. I just assumed that insurance companies know the contractors that are out there, so I never really went in and did that. So thank you for that tip. So, I appreciate you coming on today and working with my schedule and your schedule and making this happen. And I'm hoping that a lot of guys on here got some insight out of that. Any closing comments that you would have for guys? Maybe common mistakes that you see guys doing when they're getting started out with insurance?
Well, the number one thing is coming back to my opening comment, find somebody that you like and that you trust, and then be willing to talk to them 4 times a year, even if it's by phone, because at the end of the day, they can really, really be helpful, and they can help you succeed.
Yep.
That's
okay.
About it, so.
Well, thank you, Louis. Appreciate it. And I think if you don't mind, I'm probably going to add you to the group so that you can see the questions and comments people leave. And once again, this podcast is on iTunes and YouTube and Sprout, and I think we're on about 5 or 6 different platforms. So yeah, it was awesome. And I think this is a area that most contractors, they know it's important, but they just don't understand. And so if you're like me and you don't understand, sometimes it's easy to rush through it and not put enough focus and attention on it. But I have felt the pains of making poor insurance decisions, and a little bit of homework at the front end and getting involved with a good person you can trust is definitely a good preventative measure.
You've been listening to the Rocket Roof Show podcast. Be sure to subscribe through your favorite podcasting platforms such as iTunes or Google Play to get the latest episodes as they are launched. For more, please follow us on social media or visit our website at rocketroofshow.com. We look forward to joining you here again soon at the next launch.